In All Gods Village, twins were born at certain regular intervals. The villagers believed twins were a single person that split and got born as two. Twins were thought to radiate great energy when they become one again.
Twins. There's always been a halo of mystery around twins in many cultures. Some believe that their minds are connected. Some believe that they can feel each other's feelings and pain even at a long distance. Some say that they are one soul living in two bodies. Some believe that they represent the dualism of nature or constant battle between good and evil. And even though the reality may be different, twins did and still do serve as great inspiration for different stories, especially mysterious ones. Today we'll dive into one of such stories called Fatal Frame or Project 02, Crimson Butterfly.
The Lost Village.
The development of this game started shortly after the release of the first game. Although the events of Crimson Butterfly happened before the events of the first game and technically is a prequel, these stories are barely connected and you don't have to play one game to understand the other. Nevertheless, I'll still point out some similarities and connections with the first game. Right from the start, the game shows us the protagonists of the story. Mio and Mayu Amakura, her visiting the spot they used to play at all the time when they were little. This is also the place where the elder one, Mayu, fell off a cliff into the forest and injured her leg. While remembering this episode, the younger one, Mio, overlooks that her sister started chasing a red butterfly that's flying away into the woods. While trying to find her and going deeper into the woods, they meet each other in a mysterious lost village, also known as Minakami or All Gods Village. It is believed that this village was simply wiped from the map one day. But what are these tombstones we see along the way?
I've heard about this place. A long time ago, there was a village here that disappeared during a festival. People who get lost in the woods are trapped by the village. Could this be that place?
After entering the village and wandering for quite some time, we realize that there is not a single person here. Well, living person, I mean. The village is full of ghosts, and as if it was not enough, Mayu started saying some strange things. Even her behavior seems to change little by little.
Mayu! I'm sorry. I have to go.
While exploring the nearby houses, the sisters find the only efficient way to repel ghosts, the Obscura camera. There are various notes here and there, and little by little we understand what's been happening around and what exactly led to the situation we're in right now. In one of the mansions we'll see the main antagonist, a laughing girl in white kimono with a red belt and a powerful ghost we cannot harm. Mayu, unable to resist the alluring power of crimson butterflies, runs away from us in a sort of trance. Mio follows her, trying to protect her sister, but stumbles upon a certain white-haired boy called Itsuki, locked in a room with metal bars, who calls one of the sisters as Yae. He says that the ritual will begin soon, and that Sae and Yae should get out of the village.
Many years ago, in the Minakame village, two twin brothers lived, Itsuki and Mutsuki. They also had a little sister, Chitose. All children loved each other very much. The boys were called altar twins, and were supposed to be used to keep the shut. Itsuki and Mutsuki loved each other too much to become one, and the ritual failed.
Turns out that the tombstones we see in the village play the role of deities that used to protect the village from evil. Now they form a barrier around the village, and if you stepped inside it, there are low chances for a person to get out. The village consists of several mansions we may enter and investigate. The overall territory size is larger compared to the first game. In the first game, there were too many similar looking corridors, especially during the segment with masks. But here every mansion has its own place and it's easier to remember where you could see this or that thing. I mean, even the buildings got some extra thought. Like this one, for example. These two buildings are the reflected versions of each other. And these buildings were made this way not only for decoration purposes, they have a symbolic purpose. These are the buildings where twins were kept separately, to cut the bond between them. This village can be called a labyrinth, full of secret passageways, and the overall map is cleverly intertwined, presenting some Metroidvania vibes. Little by little, from different notes and diaries, we'll find information about a certain crimson sacrifice ritual, where one of the twins has to kill the other by strangling.
Sae and Yae were other candidates to calm the... So after the ritual's failure, Itsuki decided to help Sae and Yae escape. Before doing that, he decided to write his friend Ryozumo no Kata about all horrors that have been happening in this village. While running away from the village, Sae twisted her leg and fell off a cliff into the forest. Yae, leaving her sister behind, managed to escape the village. Sae and Yae promised each other that they would always be together, so Sae's spirit stayed in the village, waiting for her sister to return, since the ritual should be finished.
Yae will come back for me. She will.
The ritual had to be performed every 10-15 years, sometimes even younger children were used. For example, Akane and Azami were twin shrine maidens of the Crimson Sacrifice ritual, and we meet them in the form of ghosts. Akane survived, and her dad, seeing the guilt and loneliness of his daughter, decided to create a doll that would look just like Azami. Akane got attached to the doll, and even spoke to it as if it were her dead sister. Turned out that Azami's spirit found the doll as a vessel and decided to possess Akane. Seeing this, their father decided to get rid of the doll and throw it into the... but didn't quite make it. It is believed that this ceremony should calm the... or, in other words, the hellish abyss, and prevent repentance from occurring. The twins are moved in the twin houses, also called the Kiryu and Tachibana houses. If the ritual fails, there is still a chance to please the abyss, wait for a little longer, and try to repeat the ritual. If the ritual is not performed, earthquakes, poor harvests, and death may occur. If the ritual is failed and villagers wanted to buy some time, they could perform another ritual, Kusabi.
Ryozumo no Kata, along with his teacher Seijiro Makabe, came into the village trying to find out whether Itsuki was okay. Seijiro Makabe brought his picture box with him. They shouldn't have come here. It will only play into the hands of the villagers, although perhaps it will calm down the abyss for a while until the cleansing is done.
The cutting ritual, or Kusabi, is another horrible ritual of the village. This is a sacrifice to temporarily appease the abyss. A victim, usually a stranger outside the village, is tied with ropes and lifted into the air above the abyss. The body will be cut and broken, and the longer the torture lasts without killing a person, the more effective the ritual will be. The person will be called Kusabi after that. This practice was probably the origin of the rumor that people who went near the All Gods village got spirited away. In one of the notes we find such a text: "The gate to hell is called the abyss. Gaze not upon the abyss. Eyes that glimpse the abyss will be blinded by the abyss. Speak not of the abyss. The mouth which utters will be made speechless by the abyss. Listen not to the abyss. Those who heed the abyss are turned heartless by the abyss. The mourners are the guardians of the hellish abyss and are the only ones that can get near it. When the year of ceremony comes, the mourners sew their eyes shut so they cannot glimpse the hellish abyss. Criminals and anyone that has seen the hellish abyss are also forced to become mourners. Afterwards, they live underground, never returning to the surface." To tell you the truth, the vast majority of the plot is described in notes and diaries, but not in cutscenes. So if you don't like to read or you're not attentive enough, good luck trying to find out what's been happening here. The people of this region believe that twins were once a single being, which was split into two at birth. The ceremony is based on the belief that when the two bodies are united as one, the Shrine Maiden will gain the power of a deity. The text says the older sister must strangle the younger and throw her into the abyss. In other words, Mayu should kill Mio. But not until we find another note that claims, "Nowadays when twins were born, we think of the one born first as being the older brother or sister. But in All Gods village thought the superior or older twin would let the lesser or younger twin be born first." In this same way, throughout ancient Japan, the twin born first was considered to be the younger brother or sister, and the one born second the older twin. But on December 13th, 1874, an edict proclaimed the one born first was the older twin. From that day, that became the accepted rule. And now it's the other way around. Mio should kill Mayu. After solving some puzzles and finding a secret passageway, Mayu gets captured by ghosts and, being in a trance, goes to the place of the ritual. This is the moment where we can escape the place without Mayu, despite the promise to always be together, or follow and try to save her.
This is how it was meant to be.
If you choose to run away alone, you'll get a cutscene where Saya's ghost chases Mio down, and Mio wakes up at the place from the very first scene alone.
I'm sorry. I can't keep our promise.
Don't look back.
Mia, didn't we promise? Together always. Mayu! Mayu? Mayu! 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 I'll wait. Forever.
If you decide to follow Mayu and try to save her during your first walkthrough on PlayStation 2, you'll find her surrounded by ghost priests near the altar, where the sacrifice must be performed. Mayu asks her sister to finish the ritual. Being in a semi-trance, Mio fulfills Mayu's wish.
We were born together. But we have to live and die separately. I knew this. I knew. Mayu. We'll be together. We will. We can't be together forever. But with this, we can become one. So it's all right. Why didn't you give me back my ability to feel your hands on my neck since we were just waiting on you on that dance? I was waiting, 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 waiting.
After that, the mark from strangling turns into a crimson butterfly. The body gets devoured by the abyss, and all ghosts are celebrating since the ritual is finally complete. Villagers believe that the maiden who becomes a butterfly ascends to heaven, its wings opening the skies and bringing light wherever it goes. After realizing what Mio has done, she shakes her head in shock and runs after her sister's soul, accompanied by an amazing song performed by Amano Tsukiko called Cho.
Thank you.
She says how sorry she is before finally seeing Mayu is leading her to the gate. The twin that killed her other half in the Crimson Sacrifice ritual was called the Remaining and was feared and respected.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Twins are known to share each other's pain. The Remaining bore a vestige on her own throat of the mark her sister received during the ritual.
Didn't we always promise each other? Together, forever.
If you decide to finish the game on hard mode, you'll see one more ending. In this ending, Mio beats the spirit inside her possessed sister and saves her from falling into the abyss.
Don't look in there!
But, as it was written in one note, eyes that glimpse the abyss will be blinded by the abyss.
I can't remember how we were able to leave the village. We were found passed out in the woods. And that village is no more.
Mio, let's go now. Mm-hmm. Together, forever.
After finishing the game, just like in the previous part, you'll get some bonuses. After finishing the game on the easy level, you will unlock, as I've already said, the Crimson Butterfly ending when Mio loses her sight and saves Mayu, image art with 10 pictures at the gallery, some promotional images with 3 pictures at the gallery, and unlock mission mode. After finishing the game on the normal and hard difficulty levels, you'll unlock some costumes and accessories like glasses for Mio and Mayu. Well, it's high time we started talking about gameplay. If I wanted to compare this game with the first one in one sentence, I would say that it's become better in every possible way. As they say, everything is known in comparison. The movement in the first game was rather slow and awkward, especially if we're talking about climbing ladders. In this game, the girls move faster and the controls are more responsive. Some may say that they're still slow, but according to the creators, this is part of the horror. Makoto Shibata, the creator of the series, says, I think you could find horror games where you move around quickly and easily, like any normal game if you were to look, but it's a bad idea to make movement pleasant in a horror adventure, especially in the case of something like Zero, which is atmospheric and appeals to your imagination. If you were to calculate the speed necessary to allow space for the imagination to work, which is indispensable for a horror game, the best walking speed for your character would be a slow and uncomfortable one. The graphics and level of attention to detail also became better. I can even appreciate the level of detail of the sisters. Even ribbons on their chests look like red butterflies. Or how the very first frames are slightly blurred when you start looking into the camera. It barely influences the overall experience. I mean, if such a thing wasn't done, it wouldn't change anything in terms of the gameplay. Developers might not do it, but they did, and I appreciate it. From my point of view, such exact small details make a huge impact on your experience. Or how Sae's white kimono is folded with the right side overlapping the left. In Japanese traditions, this configuration is specially reserved for the deceased. Or how bloodstains on Sae's kimono are made to resemble half of a butterfly's wings. We'll talk slightly more about some other observations later, but I really appreciate the level of thought put into designing the characters only. Not only Mio and Mayu deserved some extra thought, but even the enemies as well. Almost every minor ghost received its own story in the game. Yes, we had almost the same feature with the collection of ghosts after the walkthrough in the first game. But here you meet ghosts at the places where they died and may listen to a short story, or see how this or that ghost died according to the environment and circumstances.
Itsuki has always loved his little sister Chitose and promised to protect her. But after what he's done, under the weight of his guilt, his hair turned white. Being captured, eaten by the pain, he committed suicide. When the repentance escaped and devoured the village, Chitose, being fragile, kind, and scared, locked herself in a closet and never left it.
Besides obvious deductions, after defeating an enemy, it may leave a special spirit stone. These stones are able to store the feelings and thoughts of people from the past. In the first game, we could listen to the tape recorder, but in this game, we may listen to such stones using the Spirit Stone radio. The only item that gives us new information over time and may leave a hint where to go and what to do next is Mayu's amulet, made in a form of magatama. It's not quite clear why they have this exact form, but scientists believe that they may resemble animal fangs, human fetuses, the shape of the soul, or might be modeled after the shape of the moon. The gameplay improved as well in many different ways, although it may look the same. First of all, the point from the first game where you have to come closer to your enemy to make a better shot remains the same, but transformed into a more interesting action. In the previous game, the camera was charging faster if you were closer to your enemies, and yes, this way you had higher chances to make a zero shot. But in this game, the distance between your opponents influences the maximum damage you'll be able to deal. In other words, in Fatal Frame 1, you could be farther from your opponent, and you could still accumulate maximum charge of the camera, but in Fatal Frame 2, you have to be closer to your opponent to deal maximum damage. Besides that, now depending on what film you're using, it may require some time to recharge. The weakest film takes more time to reload. The stronger the film is, the more damage it deals and the faster it recharges. The weakest type of film is now infinite, and you don't have to recharge it at save points all the time. There are 5 types of film from the weakest to the strongest. The only thing that I don't understand is why developers decided to cut the fast turn ability on PlayStation 2. As in the previous game, you have the same filament that indicates hidden ghosts and objects, and in this case it shines blue. And if you encounter an aggressive ghost, the filament will shine yellow depending on in which turn the ghost is situated. You also receive points for repelling ghosts and performing different kinds of shots. Zero shot. If you're pretty close to a ghost and when the capture circle turns red, aka shutter moment, you have a chance to perform zero shot and deal some extra damage for some extra points. Fatal Frame Shot. If you find a special piece of the upgrade for your camera called Instant Function, wait a little longer and manage to take a shot right before enemy attacks, you'll see a red light under the filament flashing. It means that you can perform a fatal frame shot. It allows you to perform 3 shots in a row. The tricky part is that it may be hard to score all 3 shots, since just like in the first game, you should primarily focus on a ghost's face, and after the first successful shot, the ghost is pushed back. You encounter several enemies more often than in the previous game, so if you manage to fit multiple shots in your viewfinder, you'll be able to perform double or even triple shots. A core shot is the same as in Fatal Frame 1. If you line up the lock circle precisely with the crosshair in the middle of the viewfinder and take a shot, you'll get some extra points. Just kill happens when your damage excesses an enemy's remaining HP. Just like in the previous game, you may collect spirit orbs, but in Fatal Frame 2, they serve a different purpose. You see, in Fatal Frame 1, you are limited to use auxiliary functions of the camera by the number of orbs you carried. But in this game, you may use them to upgrade your main and auxiliary functions, about which we'll talk pretty soon. It means that you cannot just select the function and upgrade it using your spirit points. First, you should insert one or several spirit stones into the function you want to upgrade, and then spend your spirit points to buy ones. Yeah, it may sound like an overcomplication a little, but I think it was done for the sake of replayability. Fatal Frame 2 has a very high replayability potential, because you'll be able to find some abilities after several walkthroughs or after finishing missions in mission mode with a certain score. Speaking about upgrades and abilities, in this game you may add active and passive abilities by finding additional parts and lenses for your camera. This way, if you're not attentive enough, you may simply miss an upgrade. And this is one of the downsides of this game in my opinion, because sometimes items may appear in places where you've already been to and where you don't have to return to by all means. There are some basic functions you have and can upgrade right from the start, and they are almost similar to the basic functions from the first game. Range increases the range of the capture circle, accumulation, the amount of spirit power your camera can store and perform special power-up shots up to 4 units, and sensitivity improves the distance at which your camera will be able to detect ghosts and increases your basic damage. Let's start from active abilities or lenses, as the game calls them. As I've already said, you may find these throughout the game. You may miss them, and some of them appear after several walkthroughs or after finishing mission mode. Each lens requires a different amount of spirit power. Slow lens slows your enemy. Stun lens. While this effect is active, the spirit will stop off and on. C lens allows you to see ghosts that like to disappear or flicker out of sight. Track lens allows you to stick to and follow a ghost. Stop lens. This one is like the improved version of the stun lens. Using this lens, you'll completely stop an enemy for some time. Blast lens deals some extra damage and knocks an enemy back. Zero lens is an improved version of blast lens. It deals even more damage and pushes back an enemy. And crush lens, the most powerful lens that deals tons of damage. Also, there is serial lens that allows you to perform special shots without being in shutter moment. Each of these lenses, just like the basic functions, may be upgraded with spirit orbs and spirit points. But how do you collect spirit power to use these awesome features? Just by battling with ghosts and receiving spirit points, simple as that. At first you're able to equip only one lens, but not after we start talking about passive abilities, among which you may find a switch upgrade that allows you to keep up to 3 lenses and switch between them. Measure. Unlike the previous game, you're not even able to see the health bar of your opponents from the start of the game, but with this equipment you can easily do it. Instant helps to indicate the exact time you need to start shooting to start the fatal frame sequence. If you add alarm to it, you'll also hear the sound where the fatal frame sequence is available. Evade allows you to escape from a ghost grab by using the flash on your camera. Save allows you to collect more spirit power to perform power shots with lenses. Sense will allow your filament to react on previously unseen ghosts. And Zoom, as obvious as it is, allows you to zoom in and zoom out. You see how drastically the combat has changed in a better way in comparison with the first part. If in the previous game you were limited to use special shots only for tough and powerful enemies by the Spirit Stones, then now all these abilities are a part of the gameplay. On the one hand, you may use these abilities to make the game easier, but on the other hand, you still have to come closer to deal the most amount of damage, but risking to take damage yourself. How cool is that? Some of you might notice that Mayu often runs after Mio, and you might have a thought that this whole game is an escort mission. And you're partly right, but just partly. Yes, sometimes we have to wait for Mayu to catch up on us, but for most of the game we'll be separated from each other. But what's more important is that when Mayu is around, ghosts get attracted to her, so sometimes it's wiser to use her as bait and deal with enemies from a safe distance. The downside of this decision is that you cannot see Mayu's HP anywhere, so if you abuse this trick too much, Mayu will easily die and you'll get a game over screen. The whole cinematography and the general atmosphere were also influenced by the outstanding arrangements of static and semi-static cameras. And I'm not talking only about the angles during gameplay segments, but during cutscenes as well.
I wonder if anyone's here.
It's hard to appreciate the result and effort from such short footage, but if you ever played or will play the game, you'll understand what I'm talking about. I think it's a good time to start talking about the Xbox version of the game called Project Zero 2 Crimson Butterfly Director's Cut, which was released several months later and had some great improvements. Since we're not that far from the passage about cameras, I think it's fair to mention that the Xbox version had a first-person view, which was rather terrible and completely changed the atmosphere of the game. In my opinion, this approach may work if you're changing the camera from tracking to the camera from the eyes. We've seen good implementations of this decision. The first example that pops into my head is The Evil Within 2, but it's much harder to keep the tension and atmosphere if you're doing something like this with fixed or semi-fixed cameras. The Xbox version received a higher frame rate, up to 60 FPS. You're now able to change the film right in your viewfinder, and you get your quick turnaround button back. You may choose hard difficulty right from the start without the necessity to finish the game on normal level. After beating the game on the hard mode, you'll unlock Nightmare difficulty. After finishing the game in Nightmare difficulty, you'll get one extra ending. Mio manages to save Mayu, and together they escape the village.
Why did you leave me all alone? You promised that we'd always be together. Until the very end, I'll be waiting. Sigh. I knew you'd come. I'm so sorry. I promised you we'd always be together. That day. I know. I understand. Together forever, I promise. Now, I can finally go. I'll never let you go again. Mayu. Mayu. I'm so glad I made it.
Fatal Mode is the next mode after Nightmare. If a ghost grabs Mio, her whole health bar will be taken down. But if she grabbed a stone mirror that gives one extra life, but can be carried only one at a time, she has another chance to continue. If a ghost grabs Mayu, it means instant game over. But to balance this difficulty level, you can buy film, even the strongest one. And of course cosmetics, but in the Xbox version you have to buy new stuff with spirit points, including the mission mode, survival mode, spirit stones, etc. Survival mode is the mode where you have to explore and kill ghosts, but you don't have your traditional HP bar. The only way to survive is to find mirror stones. In 2012, Fatal Frame 2 was released on Nintendo Wii. I'm not saying ported to Wii, I'm saying released, because you can easily call this game a new version. This version is called Project 02, or Fatal Frame 2 Deep Crimson Butterfly. Of course, the controls were completely reworked, the visuals were improved and sometimes even reworked. Also, the voice acting changed, and now the protagonists sound older than they are. Because of the changed controls, semi-fixed cameras turned into a static one from behind a shoulder. Now you have a chance to look closer at something or investigate some dark places. But if you're too fast and greedy, some ghosts may catch you. Honestly, it may be fun several times, but after like the 10th time, it may irritate you more than entertain. Each ghost now has new attacks and special abilities given to them. Now they have a passive ability called a Dark Return. It may occur randomly while fighting. It restores a ghost's health and deals more damage. Lenses also got some rework. Now you can combine several lenses in one shot. Red lenses are now responsible for basic upgrades, blue lenses are responsible for active abilities, and green ones are passive abilities. You may equip 3 lenses of different colors at a time, but the amount of spirit energy required for every lens is summarized. For example, a red lens with improved damage requires 2 spirit points, a blue lens with stun requires 1 spirit point, and a green evade lens requires 0 points. This way you'll need 3 spirit points to perform a special shot. Considering this new balance system, you are now able to upgrade the meter with spirit points even more. And in this version you don't need spirit orbs to upgrade your abilities, you can buy upgrades right away. The cutscenes were improved.
Itsuki and Mutsuki took part in the ceremony. Now it is our turn.
Some puzzles and places were reworked. In some cases, when in the PS2 and Xbox versions Mio and Mayu got separated, in the Wii version they may stay together, which leads to some exclusive cutscenes that will also influence the ending. If you watch 3 extra cutscenes in Chapter 8 and beat the Kusabi in over 5 minutes, you'll see Shadow Festival ending.
The repentant! Forgive us for what we have done! Forgive us for what we have done! What we have
So, this time you couldn't escape alone. Mayu. But it is already too late. The abyss has awoken. The time of the repentance is here.
had only fled from here, you at least would have been saved. But how could I live with myself? How could I stand being alone with all that pain and sadness? I'm here with you, Mayu. Even if it's just for this short time. This is the end. And I want us to be together. This time, we fall together.
Mia! Wait for me!
It's nearly time, Mayu. It's beautiful. That's what I thought too. If only this day could last forever.
If you watch 3 extra cutscenes in Chapter 8, beat the Kasabi in under 5 minutes and beat Sae in under 2 minutes, you get Frozen Butterfly ending.
Mayu, I found you. Don't run away anymore. I won't go anywhere. We will become one. Now, there is something you must do. You know, don't you? No! Mio. I can't. Mio. I could never. I know. I know you could never do that. No matter how much I want you to. I love that about you, Mio. If we won't truly be together, if we won't become one, then I don't mind if I'm in hell.
As long as I'm with you.
Mayu. Let us be together. Together forever. We will stay here.
Just the two of us.
Along with the cutscenes, some notes were also slightly reworked, and in some cases became longer, giving new information. I should make a small side note that in 2008, Fatal Frame 4 was released on Nintendo Wii. Yeah, Fatal Frame 4 Mask of the Lunar Eclipse was released in 2008, and Fatal Frame 2 Deep Crimson Butterfly was released on Wii in 2012. So there are some references in this game to the fourth part, but I decided to leave them for the video when we'll be talking about the lunar eclipse. Also, you may find a haunted house mode. To finish this mode, you have to fulfill several conditions. In some cases, we have to keep an eye on the steel heart meter. If the player moves the Wii remote or nunchuck unnecessarily, which is considered a sign of fear, the player accumulates points in the steel heart meter. Once the steel heart meter reaches level 3, it's game over. In another mode, we have to collect all dolls and not be captured by a blind woman. In the third mode, we have to find and take pictures of spirits. Speaking about the setting, such small isolated villages like the one presented in the game really exist in Japan. For example, Shirakawa village was quite isolated from another world. The village's area is almost 96% mountainous forests, and due to the large amount of snow that falls in winter, it was completely separated from others. Thus people could only live and survive by helping each other. And although Shirakawa village was an inspiration for another series called Higurashi no Nakokoro ni, or When They Cried, it might be a source of inspiration for the creators of Fatal Frame 2 as well. Another inspiration might be an urban legend about Sugisawa village, where one day a man from the village went crazy. Within a single day, he killed everyone living in the village and then took his own life. It is said that the events of that day were so horrible that the local government decided to leave the village abandoned, and at the same time deny anything ever took place. Then they erased all traces of the village from the local maps. This legend may be based on actual crime in 1938 that took place in the small village of Kamo, close to Tsuyama in Okayama Prefecture. A man, Mitsuo Toi, 21 at the time, killed 30 people and injured 3 before killing himself. Speaking about other themes and inspirations, I cannot ignore butterflies. Depending on the context, they may carry different meanings. In many cultures, they are presented as a symbol of rebirth and transformation. In Japan, many believe that they carry the souls of departed people or even represent the souls themselves. Also, there is a belief that if you follow a butterfly, it will solve a problem or lead you to happiness. You might also notice a red string, or in this case, a red rope that connects girls together. This is a reference to the red strings of fate in Japan. It is believed that everyone's pinky finger is tied to an invisible red string that invisibly connects you to people you have a common fate with. It occurs that the ulnar artery that goes from your heart connects it with the pinky finger. This is the same reason why in many cultures promises are made by two people crossing their pinkies. They literally connect their hearts. Sometimes these strings may be presented as ropes tied up around bellies. Most of the people will point at their chests if you ask them, "Where do you think a soul live?" But the Japanese believe that souls are situated in the area of bellies. This way harakiri or seppuku take on a little more depth and meaning, don't you think? Probably the most iconic similar image to the game was shown in the movie called Dolls by Takeshi Kitano. I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but twins or a phenomenon of dualism appear in Japanese culture pretty often. For example, have you ever encountered this trope where the soul got split into two and one of these parts reincarnated in a girl before the first Silent Hill? It appeared so that in many popular Japanese media, twins are associated with something mystical or paranormal. They may be demonic creatures, harbingers of evil, or even represent the evil itself. In such games as Silent Hill, Metal Gear Solid, Nier/Drakengard series, Koan, Devil May Cry, and other games, you may justify it by saying that it was done to save resources. Copy and paste a 3D model is easier than creating two different models, especially on a tight budget. But this rule and excuse don't work if we're talking about other media like manga, anime, and books. Anime like Shaman King starts from twins being born, and one of them should be killed. ReZero has two made demons, and one of them should have been killed. Partly other when the protagonist mentions a dead twin. Mai and Maki Zenin from Jujutsu Kaisen, and triple X-holic twins without souls help to run the shop that helps wishes come true. Not always, of course, sometimes twins are just twins, but you can clearly see the general trend. It was supposed to be a separate video, but I cannot think of a better moment to talk about Japanese twins in media than here. I would like to ask you to listen to this segment till the very end, because I will give a rather important remark after it. In the Edo period, which lasted from 1603 and lasted to 1868, families practiced mabiki. This concept came from farming, which literally translates as creating space between plants and pull them. For example, if you plant 8 plants too close to each other, some of them won't have enough space and nutrition to grow. So people would have to pull the weakest plant to help the stronger ones grow. During those times, the Japanese people didn't relate to embryos and even to newly born children as living beings, more like things. More than that, they believed that even for some time after birth, children are still connected to the spirit world. So some parents could perform mabiki, leave only the most suitable and strongest children, and send other, less appropriate children back to the spirit world until a better time comes. There were many superstitions about what to consider as a suitable or inappropriate child. Parents could look at the number of children they already had and what sexes they were and decided whether to keep a baby or not. A baby born with teeth, for example, was considered as bad luck, mildly speaking. And now we're smoothly approaching the twins. There is more than just quantity pressure. At those times, twins were considered a sign that the mother had mixed the seed of several men and gave birth to several children. If a woman gave birth to even more children, her status could change from being a human to being an animal, because it was believed that only animals could give birth to such a big number of offspring. In short, to bear twins was perceived as barbarous and unlucky, so efforts were made to hide or kill one or both twins. Considering everything being said, it's not surprising why the Lost Village was told to be cursed. And here comes the remark. I didn't find much information about mabiki. Some sources mentioned this practice, and probably the most complete work on mabiki was done by Fabian Franz Drixler in his book Mabiki, Infanticide and Population Growth in Eastern Japan. As far as I remember, he used data from patrimonial books that led him to certain conclusions. What I'm trying to say here is that the amount of information considering this phenomenon is rather low, so that's why I can't speak with absolute confidence that things happened the way they're described. If there were 20 various not connected sources of information, I would probably be more sure. Once again, I would like to emphasize that even if such a thing really happened, those were different times with different beliefs, traditions, and customs, and it was totally appropriate and acceptable at those times. More than that, Mabiki was considered as responsible parenthood. From my point of view, it's unacceptable to judge people for things that happened many years ago, especially if there is not enough evidence to prove one's point of view. Luckily, in the case of Mabiki, we have enough evidence to at least look at this direction and consider such things happening. Just like in the previous game, we see the rebirth of souls, how Yae's and Sae's souls used Mio and Mayu as vessels to complete the ritual. Speaking about Yae, who escaped the village, she is a great-grandmother of Miku Hinasaki, the protagonist of the first game. We could see some mentions and notes about Yae in the first game. She would later marry Ryozamu Nakata, aka the folklorist from the first game and child in this one. I'm not surprised that Fatal Frame 2 or Project Zero Crimson Butterfly is considered one of the best horror games out there. In comparison with the first part, this installment improved in every possible aspect, including voice acting. This game is one of the greatest examples of an interesting, mysterious horror and even slightly detective story, combined with engaging gameplay. Neil Druckmann, the director of Uncharted and The Last of Us games, even confessed that Fatal Frame 2 is one of his favorite games. And rightfully, if you ask me. If you're into old-school survival horror games, I would definitely recommend trying it. There's probably something that I missed. Did you play this game? Maybe you've learned something new today. Let me know in the comments section below. If you liked this video, consider leaving a like, and I would really appreciate it if you could share this video for some time on your social media. If you want to extra thank me for the work, you may support me through Patreon, where you pay $1 only per creation, or you may use YouTube's applause feature. Thank you so much for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. See you in the next video.